You know, when we think about the ancient temple in Jerusalem, we usually picture these grand, sacred rituals. But what if the altar at its very heart wasn't just about ceremony? What if it was more like a piece of spiritual technology, a system that operated with this precise, almost computer-like logic? Well, today, we're going to crack the altar's code. I mean, really think about it for a second. If you were in charge of designing the most important place on Earth, where every single action has this deep, profound meaning, how would you even begin to lay it out? How would you make sure everything happens exactly where and when it's supposed to? Well, the answer, according to the Talmud, is with just staggering, mind-bending precision. Every single ritual, every movement, every offering, it was all governed by this incredibly complex set of rules. So let's put on our detective hats and follow the Talmudic sages as they investigate one tiny corner of this secret space to uncover its hidden logic. All right, so our investigation has to start with understanding the altar itself. We need to see that it wasn't just some big block of stone. It's better to think of it more like a map of meaning, a kind of sacred GPS, where every single coordinate had its own unique spiritual purpose. This slide really nails it. It was a cosmic switchboard. Performing ritual in the wrong spot, that was like plugging a critical cable into the wrong port. The connection just wouldn't happen. Different offerings had to go to very specific zones on the altar's surface. So now let's open our case file, the rules of the southwest corner. We're zooming way in on this one specific location. The ancient text of the Mishnah gives us a really clear set of rules for just this one spot. And this, my friends, is where our investigation really kicks off. Okay, here's our evidence. The corner was divided by this conceptual red line. Below it, you had certain rituals like bird sin offerings. Then, above the line, other things took place, like water and wine libations. And this is crucial for our story, bird burnt offerings. So these are the facts of the case. But, with rules this specific, questions are bound to come up. And that brings us to our very first puzzle, the case of the ash pit. It's a small detail about those bird offerings that just seems a little bit out of place. It's like a loose thread that the Talmudic sages, of course, just had to pull on. So here's the question. The Mishnah tells us that the ideal spot for a bird burnt offering was actually on the eastern side of the altar. So why was the southwest corner an acceptable backup? Why this specific bit of flexibility? What was so special about the east side? And the answer is, well, it's brilliantly practical. The Beit Hadashin, which is just the ash pit, was located to the east. This is where the priests would dispose of the unusable parts of the bird offering, the crop and the feathers. So doing the whole ritual in the east was simply a matter of efficiency. It was closer. Case closed, right? Well, not quite. Because this really simple, logical explanation leads to an absolutely incredible tangent. When the sage rabbi Yochanan thinks about the priests working at that backup spot, the southwest corner, he doesn't focus on how inefficient it is. He just marvels at their strength. He did the math. He realized that a priest standing all the way at the far southwest corner had to toss the incredibly light crop and feathers of the bird all the way across the altar to the ash pit on the eastern side. That's a distance of over 30 cubits. That's more than 45 feet or 14 meters. I mean, to put that into perspective, that's like standing at the very back of a city bus and trying to accurately toss an empty coffee cup into a little trash bin right next to the driver. It is an absolutely astonishing feat of strength and precision hidden inside what seemed like a minor little rule. And now for the main event of our whole detective story, a contradiction in the path. As the sages kept digging into the priest movements, they found what looked like a direct, head-on conflict in their sources. So, the first piece of evidence is a rule that's all about protecting the offerings. A priest who was carrying wine, or maybe a live bird, had to take the most direct route up the altar ramp, and this was to minimize its exposure to the altar's smoke, which could spoil the wine or even harm the bird. Makes perfect sense, right? Here is the problem. The smoke rule says you take a direct path. But there's another source that describes the high priest on Yom Kippur doing the exact opposite. He circles the entire altar before he gets to the southwest corner to pour the wine. So which is it? Does he circle and expose the wine to all that smoke, or does he go direct? The two rules seem totally impossible to reconcile. Okay, but this is where that Talmudic mindset really shines. For the sages, a contradiction isn't a flaw in the text. It's an invitation to dig deeper. It's a clue that tells them they're missing a key piece of the puzzle. And the clue is hidden in the language. The sages zoom in on the precise wording. The text says that when the high priest finally reaches the corner, quote, he is given wine to pour. It doesn't say one tells him to pour, which would kind of imply he was already holding it. And this tiny, tiny difference in phrasing, it's everything. And that is the breakthrough. The high priest wasn't breaking the smoke rule at all. Why? Because he circled the altar completely empty-handed. It was only when he arrived at the correct corner that the wine was then handed to him. The contradiction just vanishes. Both rules are true, and they operate in perfect harmony. So what does this whole case reveal? It tells us so much about a unique way of thinking, what we can call the Talmudic mindset. It's a worldview that sees everything as this intricate, coherent system, where every single detail has meaning. So this mindset, it operates on a core belief. There are no true contradictions. There are only gaps in our understanding. Every single word is precise. The goal is always to harmonize all the data, all the sources, into one seamless system. And the whole thing is driven by that relentless, constant question, why? From the location of an ash pit to the choice of a single verb, nothing is an accident. This ancient detective story really shows that behind what can look like totally arbitrary rules, there can be a whole universe of logic and meaning. And it kind of leaves us with a final question. What complex systems in our own world, our laws, our traditions, even our technologies, might we understand on a completely different level if we just look a little closer and never stop asking why?